Good afternoon and good day wherever you may be joining us from. Welcome to another edition of the Digital Download, the longest running weekly business talk show on LinkedIn Live. Now globally syndicated on TuneIn Radio through IBGR, the world's #1 business talk, news, and strategy radio network. Today, we're talking about how to inspire the side hustle generation. In a first for us, we have two special guests, Rupinder Drew and Bill Muirhead, both from the Peter Jones Foundation, a UK-based charity that promotes entrepreneurship for young people. And they're going to help us with the discussion. Bill and Rupi are deeply involved in the development of programs that empower young people to embrace entrepreneurial thinking. But before we bring them on, let's go around the set and introduce everyone. And while we're doing that, why don't you in the audience reach out to a friend, ping them, and have them join us. We strive to make the digital download an interactive experience. Audience participation is highly encouraged. And with that, Tim, would you kick us off, please?
Thank you, Rob. Yes, welcome everybody. My name's Tim Hughes. I'm the CEO and co-founder of DLA Ignite, and I'm famous for writing the book, Social Selling Techniques to Influence Buyers and Changemakers.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Adam, good to see you again. Welcome.
Thank you very much indeed. Hi, everybody. I'm Adam Gray. I'm Tim's business partner and co-founder of DLA Ignite. I'm famous for writing the book, Brilliant Social Media, or I was. It's a long time ago now. And I've also written a book with Tim. And it's great to be here. And this is a truly exciting subject, I think, isn't it?
Absolutely. I am too. Yes. Thank you. And myself, I am Rob Durant. I am the founder of Flywheel Results, a proud DLA Ignite partner. And I too have written a book. I have written the Social Enablement Blueprint. Stop pitching and start selling. Thank you, Tim. All right. As I said, this week on the Digital Download, we'll speak with Bill Muirhead, Managing Director, and Rupinder Drew, Head of Programs at the Peter Jones Foundation. Their work has played a pivotal role in helping the side hustle generation develop the skills needed to navigate today's business challenges. Let's bring them on. Rupi, Bill.
Hi. Hello.
Welcome.
Hello, everyone.
Hi, guys. Lovely to be here.
Fantastic. Rupi, let's start with you. Let's ask you to tell us a little bit more about you, your background, and what led you to where you are today.
Thank you. Thank you, Rob. And hi, everyone. So my name is Rupinder Drew, and I'm the Head of Programs at the Peter Jones Foundation. I guess I'm working in the role that I'm working because I'm really passionate about enterprise entrepreneurship and young people. I've been with the Peter Jones Foundation team for coming up to 2 years. And prior to that, I was working within a Peter Jones Enterprise Academy over at Leicester College in the East Midlands. And it was all about empowering young people to, I guess, be more in control of their futures and not feeling that the only options available to them would be working for somebody else or just going to university and not thinking beyond that. So it's kind of, wanting to empower them to think of coming up with their own sort of business idea and seeing that as a viable future for them. I've worked within social enterprise as well. So I think definitely my values are very sort of community-based, very sort of helping people. And that's what I love to do.
Fantastic. I can tell this is going to be a great conversation. I'm looking forward to it. Thank you. And Bill, same question. Please tell us a little bit more about you, your background, and what led you to where you are today.
Thanks, Rob. Hello, everybody. I'm managing director, as you said, at the Peter Jones Foundation. I've been there 7 years, 4 as MD, and I joined having worked at Coca-Cola for 10 years. And my role at Coke was part of their sort of corporate social responsibility, running community and education programs. So I've been involved in that space between business and education, actually for probably about 20 years, and it's something that I'm really passionate about. I think that passion for me started a little bit before Coke, in my late 20s, when I worked in the welfare to work sector. And I ran a centre in Brixton in London. And it was quite a tough area at the time. And the centre had about 150 unemployed people on our books who would face various challenges. And in that role, I really saw right up front people who were kind of falling through the cracks of the education system, who weren't, who were maybe being failed a little bit by education. And I began to get really sort of passionate about how can we address that? How can we solve that? Where does that kind of failure start? And it's a complex question to answer. It's not all about what happens in schools, of course, but that was really the start of my journey in terms of supporting eventually young people, which is what the Peter Jones Foundation does. So I haven't written a book, I'm not famous at all, but we're very fortunate to have quite a well-known founder, Peter Jones, who many listeners will know. And he shares that passion, thankfully, for us. And I've done lots of other bits around the edges. I've been a little bit entrepreneurial in my time as well, but that will probably do as a bit of an introduction.
Excellent. Thank you. Bill, I heard you say I haven't written a book. What we like to say here is I haven't written a book yet. There's an awesome story in there, no doubt. So hopefully we'll get to read that one day. All right. Brilliant. This, as I mentioned, is the first time we've had two guests. So I want you to decide amongst yourselves how to go about answering questions. And please, this is designed to be your typical water cooler talk. So jump in anytime, anywhere. I am going to start with the foundational question. Either of you are welcome to take it on. How are traditional education programs adapting to today's fast-paced, tech-driven economy?
Oh, that's so good.
Yeah, you can take that one, Bill. I'll defer to you.
Well, look, if I'm honest about it, as a foundation, we feel, and I'm talking about the UK here, right? We're a UK-based charity. Things, I'm sure, are very different in different geographies. But here in the UK, we as a foundation would say that schools systemically aren't doing enough to prepare young people for this new world, and really to help them develop core essential skills in a more broad sense. Around about there was a survey that was carried out by the Prince's Trust recently that identified that over half of young people have never been taught about a new business, but at the same time how to set up and run a business. But at the same time, we're seeing a dramatic rise in side hustles, 32% increase in side hustles in the next 10 years. And a lot of that is being driven by tech and the opportunities that new technologies give for young people to set up businesses more easily. If you look at, just simple things like e-commerce platforms or platforms like Canva, where you can kind of develop logos and what have you, or crowdfunding platforms like Kickstarter. It's so much easier now for young people to go out and get that funding to get the core elements of their business, but they're not being taught about it in schools. So I don't think the school system has really sort of caught up with the desires of young people and the interests of young people in business and entrepreneurialism, and particularly in how they can harness technical innovations to realize their ambitions in that sense.
Can I add to that, Bill? I think also there is obviously there's a real lack of funding as well. So whilst we've got massive technological advances, and even if you were to look at just having iPads, every classroom and all students really should have access to all sort of types of technology. But there is a lack of funding, which means that you know, you can only do the best you can with what you have. And even just simple things like having, you know, access to laptops and things, you know, there's a lot of sort of, you know, digital poverty. So I think that, you know, let's definitely not do a disservice to schools. They do the best that they can with what they have, but it's a question of kind of upskilling teachers so they do have the latest tech, you know, AR, VR, AI and all that sort of stuff, that they can, you know, empower young people to really harness that and, you know, to help them kind of along the way. I mean, obviously, you know, at home, kids might have access to all sorts of tech, you know, with their mums and dads, but, you know, when they're in school, sometimes it's quite a different sort of thing. So I think that there is just a real lack of funding as well in that space.
Yeah, I mean, Rupi's absolutely right, and I totally echo what she's saying. It's not, you know, it's not about being critical of teachers at all. It's more, and I think teachers would agree, the rigidity of the system and the lack of funding, as Rupi says, that can really create barriers to helping young people to develop. And certainly that digital poverty is something that was highlighted during the pandemic, and we as a charity worked with organizations to kind of help address that and get devices out to young people who didn't have them. But yeah, it's something that could be done better.
Although I assume that there is also an element of the curriculum and the way things are taught is quite rigid and structured. You know, my son has left school now, but when he was at school, he did business studies, and he was taught business studies from a textbook. You know, and the textbook didn't reflect the way that businesses now operate, and it was taught by somebody who was a lifelong educator rather than an entrepreneur and a business leader. So I guess that there's also a bit of a disconnect there, isn't there, in terms of yes, there is digital poverty. And in fact, another friend of the show who's been on as a guest is a digital inclusion officer for one of the councils in the UK. And actually, you know, one of the things that she flagged was this huge poverty. And you said, Rupi, about mums and dads at home maybe potentially having the tech. And actually, there's an issue that in some houses, they simply don't have tech at all. So kids don't get any access to that and the launch pad for that. And it causes all sorts of issues outside of business as well. But is there an initiative that needs to take place in schools which is about teaching the teachers to be more entrepreneurial and inspire the kids? Because particularly if and you said, Bill, about working in a centre with 150 unemployed young people. If the expectation is you're not going to be able to get a job, actually maybe the thing to do is create your own job. But you need to believe it's capable to happen, don't you?
Yeah, no, absolutely.
You go for it, Rupi.
Yeah, I mean, it's quite interesting. So part of my role is we have a number of Peter Jones Enterprise Academies, and they specifically, you know, they teach either a BTEC in enterprise and entrepreneurship, or we offer a wraparound service to business A level, sometimes economics, because sometimes there's an overlap in some of the content. And often there is a problem with staffing, you know, quite simply, when you're up against it and you need to find teachers to pull in to teach a particular unit or, you know, a particular topic, you know, you don't always have the right teachers at your fingertips. So you have to pull in people who have expertises in other areas. So I would say, I think nowadays, I think you have to be so agile and you've got to be really creative. And you have to look to your own networks and see who you might know that is running their own business. I mean, certainly, you know, in my previous role at Leicester College, a lot of the teaching team would often bring in people that were friends or connected to them in some way. And I think just as people nowadays tend to have portfolio careers rather than just going for that traditional, they're going to have that one job that will, you know, last them for like 15, 20 years. I think similarly, teachers have to be really creative and think about how can they be more entrepreneurial? How can they bring in a bit more, you know, guest speakers or other aspects of enterprise entrepreneurship to bring in if they're expertise isn't business.
Yeah, I just to build on that, and Adam, you make some really good points there. But Ruby's absolutely right. You'll go into a school and you'll find, a PE teacher who's been brought in to teach business studies because they haven't got the people on the ground.
Yeah.
And that's a problem. So a big thing that we do as a foundation is bring that real business voice into the classroom, be that kind of virtually or through guest speakers and so on. And that's so important, A, for the teachers to give them that support, but B, just to put entrepreneurship on the radar of some young people and to give it a real face. And, what I mean by that is if you stop a young person in the street or in the schoolyard and ask them to name an entrepreneur, I guarantee you here in the UK, they'll say Elon Musk, they'll say Richard Branson, they'll probably say Peter Jones, they might say Alan Sugar. All of them are super successful. All of them are male. All of them are white. And for a lot of people, that means that entrepreneurship is this sort of intangible, I'm never going to be that person. And that might seem obvious to us, but to a lot of young people, it's not obvious. And the first step is sometimes getting them to appreciate that there are, thousands of entrepreneurs that look exactly just like them, just down the road. Lifestyle entrepreneurs, social entrepreneurs, and the rest of it. And also thousands of really successful multi-millionaire entrepreneurs that look just like them as well. So it's about exposing them to those relatable, that's the important word, role models. And on the teacher side, it's about giving them that support of great case studies and a bit of teacher training that we do as well, workshops and so on, so that if they haven't had any business expertise or entrepreneurial expertise themselves, then we can plug that gap a little bit.
So what is the objective and the mission of the Peter Jones Foundation? I would be interested in that. And just so people know, Peter Jones is on a TV program here called Dragon's Den, and in the States it's called Shark Tank. Just so people can understand, we're talking about a person that's actually he's on the TV every week, but he could be the equivalent of Mark Cuban or someone like that. So to my question, what's the objective therefore and the mission therefore of the Peter Jones Foundation?
So our mission is to support young people, underserved communities and underrepresented groups with developing essential skills for self-employment or employment. That's our sort of mission statement, probably word for word. And so we're talking a lot about entrepreneurship, but actually we believe those essential skills, and by essential skills, I mean all of that good stuff from teamwork to leadership to financial capability, digital skills, problem solving, communication, creativity, innovation, resilience is in there. I'm trying to list our framework. All of those essential skills that are going to help you, whether you go down that entrepreneurial route or whether you go down a more traditional career path. And you might call them life skills. At the end of the day, financial skills are as important for a household budget as they are for a P&L. So that's what we're about at a very sort of core level. But we do that through programs that give young people the opportunity of setting up and running a business in school, as well as in some sort of settings outside of mainstream education.
Have you got any examples of businesses that your pupils have set up?
Oh, we've got loads. I'll let Rupi take that one.
Go on, Rupi. Just give us a couple.
Okay, so we have two competitions that are part of our programs. One is our flagship competition, which is National Entrepreneur of the Year. It's obviously a yearly competition where our kind of top entrepreneurs get a chance to pitch their business idea directly to Peter Jones. So we're just coming up to announcing the finalists of this year's competition. So I can't let you know who those people are. But certainly for last year, we had a range of business ideas. One was, the winner was she was a fashion designer, and she upcycled clothing and made them into really beautiful clothes. And it was all about kind of sustainable fashion. And so she wanted to buck the trend with kind of fast fashion. And it was kind of a luxury, slow fashion brand. And she'd made really beautiful clothes out of denim, out of curtains. So she won £5,000 of investment for her business. And some of that money was put towards creating a sort of a 20-piece capsule collection for her business. And then we had another student who had a great idea, which was all about kind of mountain biking. And he was a keen mountain biker himself, and he wanted to kind of create a sort of a mountain biking community. And he sort of devised an app, and there was like a reward system. He had his own clothing, so every time somebody bought his clothing, they'd be given points, and those points could be put towards something, and there'd be a leaderboard, and it was all part of this app. And then the other two finalists one was gender neutral baby clothing. So typically when you have baby clothes, I didn't know that this was a thing, but I think it's called sort of a Spanish baby clothing, which is all your typical kind of ruffles and frills on baby clothes. And she wanted to go into kind of the gender neutral market with that. And she actually wanted to become the UK's first wholesaler in gender neutral clothing. So quite ambitious, but she identified that there was a market for that.
Yeah.
And she herself was, a young mum of, I think, three very young children. So it was kind of tried and tested. And then another business idea was kind of making candles, but in the shape and form of desserts. So when she pitched to Peter, Peter sort of came up with the idea that, she could have some sort of a dinner party, where she would sell her candles and they would all mimic, desserts and things, a bit like a Mad Hatter's tea party sort of thing. So that's kind of our National Entrepreneur of the Year. And then we also have our Tycoon Enterprise competition, which has its own finalists. And I think we have quite a few service-based ideas as well there, fixing and upcycling computers and then leasing them out to the local community, creating clubs for the elderly, after-school clubs. So ideas that kind of bring people together. So it's a real mix, isn't it, Bill?
It's a real mix, we could take up the whole call because we really love our beneficiaries. Nothing we like more than telling sort of beneficiary stories. I've got to throw one into the mix, and then maybe a couple of reflections on what Rupi was saying. But the one I wanted to share was actually in the summer holidays. Me and my son went karting. I don't know if any of the audience have been karting, but I'd never done it before. I loved it. We had a great time, and there was a little camera on the helmet as we went around this karting track, and at the end there was a QR code you could download a film. Downloaded the film, and I was really chuffed to see that it was from a company called Viewpoint Videos. And Viewpoint Videos was set up by a guy called David Humpston, who 10 years ago went through our Peter Jones Enterprise Academy program and pitched that idea to Peter Jones and got a £5,000 contribution.
Wow. Yeah.
And I always say contribution rather than investment because there's no equity in it. It's just, here's £5,000. We love the idea. Go for it. And you'll speak to David. He's a lovely guy, and he'll pinpoint that moment as being quite pivotal in his journey. And that business is now valued at 10 million, and he's one of our success stories, obviously. But just listening to Rupi, one of the things you might have picked up on is that what we quite often do is hone in on a person's passion. And particularly if it's a person, we work a lot in kind of areas that are quite disaffected. Part of our mission is to help people who are facing the greatest challenges in communities across the UK. And quite often what you see is a real poverty of aspiration. And young people who can't sort of see beyond possibly unemployment, possibly a fairly sort of low wage job down their local high street. But if you can kind of tap into something they're really passionate about, and it could just be a hobby like playing the guitar or dance or fashion, as one of the examples Rupi gave. One of the girls was really interested in fashion. If you can tap into that, and say, look, it doesn't just need to be a hobby. You might be able to monetize it. You might be able to turn it into a side hustle, and begin to develop those skills around it. Then that poverty of aspiration begins to flip and turns into kind of self-belief and self-confidence. And if you take them on that journey, it can lead to real kind of success. So that's very much part of what we do, and is kind of at the heart of our programs.
So how do we plant those seeds at scale? Now, obviously, it's a fair few years since I was at school, but I saw lots of instances of people that had passions being told, well, you need to focus on insert academic subject here because you'll never get a job doing whatever it is they love. Now, obviously, there are extreme examples of people that have followed their passion, irrespective of the advice they were given. People like J.K. Rowling or Tony Branson. Yeah, Richard Branson. And those are incredibly heartwarming. But I think, to your point, Bill, a lot of the challenges, people think, well, that won't be me though. So how do we plant the seed that actually anybody can do this stuff? And you may be an accountant by training, you may quite enjoy your job. There's no reason you can't become an accountant in your own business and be entrepreneurial around that. You don't have to have a weird and wacky dream or to be first to market with something.
Yeah, it's a tricky one, and we've been banging this drum for kind of 20 years. It's our 20th anniversary next year, and for us, it has to start at the top. It has to be a sort of cultural, systemic shift, and it's about embedding enterprise and entrepreneurship education in the curriculum, and moving it from that nice to do space that we talk about. Lots of great kind of enterprise business clubs happen outside of the main curriculum, but it needs to be embedded. And there are some countries where fundamentally you will set up and run a business as part of your education, and that happens quite a lot in Scandinavia. And so everyone has that experience, everyone has that exposure to entrepreneurship, and as part of that exposure, everyone gets a deeper understanding of what an entrepreneur is. It's not just that person on TV, that Richard Branson, that Peter Jones, or whatever. There are lots of different ways that entrepreneurialism can help you in terms of your life choices and what you do as a career. And of course, entrepreneurialism is part of that, being a successful employee. So I think it has to come from the top. It has to come with funding, and I don't think it's easy, because unless you choose business studies as an option, then you can easily go through your whole kind of school career without getting too much exposure to these sorts of things, without it being given due consideration as a career path.
Yeah, well, I know when I started my first business 20-something years ago, I took a redundancy package from the company that I was at because I had a new child. And then 6 months later, I had no money left, and I thought, well, I need to do something. So I thought, I'll start my own business. And it's like in those days, there was no resource to go and find out actually what do I need to do? Well, here's a list of accountants, go and choose one. Well, actually, that's of no help to me. I don't know what I'm choosing. And there was no kind of start your business 101 type resource out there. And I guess that even today, people are largely in the same space. If you're at school, as you said, Bill, if you're at school and you take a business studies course, you have some grounding in the basic dynamics of what a business is. If you've been employed and you've been a PAYE, and then you've left because you want to, or your circumstances change, or whatever it may be, and you decide that you need to set up on your own, what happens first? Where do you go? Where do you learn this basic stuff that because you're with it all day, and we know because we're with it all day, but that doesn't mean anyone else knows.
I totally agree. And the two things I'd add to that are, there's a shocking number of young people living in poverty in the UK. I think it's something like 4.3 million. 30% of children are living in poverty, and entrepreneurship is a way out of that for some. There's no doubt about it in my mind. If you can give them the skill set and the toolkit, some of those children might think, I'm never going to get a good job, but some of them might think, actually, I could be a great entrepreneur. If you can break down those barriers and provide some stepping stones. So I think it's much needed. And then on the other side of the equation, entrepreneurship is really at the heart of wealth creation and job creation. I think around about 78,000 jobs here in the UK are created by new businesses. So it's important, sort of, whether you look at it, whatever angle you look at it from, and it definitely needs to be addressed.
So we're here to inspire the side hustle generation. What role does failure play in developing entrepreneurial skills?
That's a I'll give you a break, Bill. So Peter Jones, his mantra is, it's not failure, it's feedback. And he himself, over the course of his career, he's had some bumps along the way, and that's definitely one thing that we absolutely relay and convey to students. I was at a school a couple of days ago, and we sort of we have these things called flash challenges, which are sort of bite-sized competitions that we develop with entrepreneurs, other organizations, and where students have to kind of do a bit of brainstorming and problem solving. So for the first one for this term, it's about them building a personal brand. So they have to look at the skills that they've got, the skills that they want to gain, how they're going to go about gaining those skills, and to kind of put together a short sort of 30 to 60 second elevator pitch. But part of that, I sort of said to them, is that you need to come up with your mantra that kind of underpins where you are right now and what you believe in. And I sort of said that, Peter Jones believes that it's not failure, it is feedback. And it's about having that resilience and, knowing when to give up on something if it really isn't going to work, but then also being really contrary and saying, you know what, I don't care, I'm going to just give it everything I've got and keep going with it. So it's definitely something we believe. Sometimes it's easier said than done, because when something doesn't work out, it hurts and it hits you hard, and you have to find the strength and kind of pick yourself up and dust yourself down. But yeah, it's something that we really do get that message out to any young person that is on any of our programs, that it's just feedback. Keep going. It's not about failing. I guess, look, it's semantics, isn't it? It's kind of how you position it. It's whatever works for you, but it is about, you've got to keep going.
It's absolutely about semantics. I know myself, right out of college, I tried my hand at running a venture. And what I'd like to tell people about that time is, yes, I ran a small business into the ground. So, that mindset really kept me from trying again for a long while. I learned more in the year and a half that I was trying that than I had in the 5 years it took me to get my 4-year degree. But with the right mindset, had I looked at it as feedback, I think it would have been a very different approach going forward. We do have a question from the audience. I want to bring this on screen and share. Andrew Slesser asks, is the biggest fundamental change needed to be the mindset in how the education system works and is funded? The opportunities to learn these skills need to be available to all areas within the country to allow us to find the next Peter Jones, Richard Branson, etc. So
the short answer from me is yes. I think that's a really good way of phrasing it. It is a mindset, and I don't want to make out that there are some amazing schools out there, right, who are doing this really, really well and have managed to embed enterprise education and nurture, an entrepreneurial mindset and the rest of it. So there are definitely great examples. So it's not a question of it can't be done. It's just it's not. It is a systemic thing, and I think it is a mindset in terms of the messages that are sent to schools, and obviously Ofsted's being looked at the moment, and I think that's an opportunity actually to revisit enterprise and entrepreneurship education and how that's looked at in schools, and to change that mindset. And I think the new government here in the UK is also putting a greater emphasis back on project-based learning, which is something that we champion as a charity, that kind of learning by doing, if you like. Because a lot of the young people that we work with aren't, let's say, naturally academically inclined. But if you give them a project, if you give them something to sink their teeth into, and then you show them that they're learning and they're developing these skills, then you get some great outcomes. So I think it needs to evolve, and I think a different mindset is a really nice way of articulating it.
I think there's also the how it's framed. So we went through a phase a few years ago where nobody was allowed to fail, nobody was allowed to lose. And I think that there's a big difference between you failed, then you are a failure, or you lost, you are a loser. And actually, failure is part and parcel of the real world, and children need to be introduced, or young people need to be introduced to that early. But it's like, you did a bad thing does not make you a bad person. You did this wrong doesn't make you a broken person. And actually, that's a really important message to instill, isn't it? So that as you said, Rupi, people can dust themselves down and have another go, because they know that actually it's not something inherently wrong with me. And that's quite a big shift, isn't it?
It is. But, I'm also wondering, I think the education, the culture is, exams, right? So, it's all about doing the best that you can, working really, really hard to get the grades that you need to pass those exams, to get onto the next level. And I think that is very much part of our culture. So how can you then switch that part of your brain off and then think, right, I'm going to do this new venture, or I'm learning a new skill, or I'm learning a new hobby, and it's not quite working out? How can you still be resilient if that doesn't work out, when you've been trained to think you cannot fail your exams? So I think there's a bit of disconnect, isn't there? Because you put your all into not failing your exams, but what about failing other things that you can keep going at?
Is this going to be on the test?
It's in the exam.
Right.
I think, it's I think there's an imbalance at the moment, right? I mean, exams are important. None of us would kind of discount exams, but they're too important, and skills are not important enough. And there's an organisation here in the UK that does great work called the Skills Builder Partnership, and they're trying to work not only with schools. I think they've got about 80% of schools signed up to their framework of essential skills. And interestingly, they did a bit of work that identified that if young people, there was a 22.2 billion cost to the UK economy of young people not developing those essential skills. But the important piece they're now doing is trying to engage employers, so that the same skills framework is used in the context of professional development. And with that, you're going to get more of a systemic change, because if skills are held in higher regard against a framework by employers, then that, to my mind, will have a trickle-down effect to the education system. But we're certainly seeing a lot of employers wake up to the fact that the skills aren't there, and say simple things like, look, we'll get people who've come out of university and they can't stand on their own 2 feet and deliver a presentation or write a decent email or whatever it is. It's a very it's a difficult nut to crack, but and there are lots of elements to it. But I'm sort of encouraged by some of the work that's going on and some of the changes that are taking place recently.
Can you talk a little bit about adaptability, its importance, and how you might instill that in today's youth?
That's a good one. I can certainly talk to our Tycoon program, and Rupi, do chip in and tell me if you agree. But our Tycoon program is our sort of entry level program, if you like, and we have, kids as young as 6 doing it in primary school, and they're setting up and running a business, sometimes just within a term, and sometimes it's like an arts and crafts business or cupcakes or a boot wash or whatever it is. But at a very simple level, they're beginning to understand the fundamentals of what running a business is like. And it's a competition, and it's run through a digital platform, and there's a leaderboard that shows your profit. And so you can see how you're doing against other student-led businesses in your age category across the country. But to come to your question, whilst it's a competition, it's not based on profit at all. It's very much based on the business journey. And what we encourage the young people taking part to do is to periodically reflect and run a business that's quite iterative. So that involves them, going back to the previous question, making mistakes and learning from those mistakes, and not seeing those mistakes as failure, but just seeing them as part of a journey that ultimately will lead to some level of reward. And that necessarily involves adaptability, because you're identifying what's gone wrong and you're thinking, okay, well, how can we change that? Maybe we didn't get the pricing right, or maybe if we look at ourselves as a team, maybe we're doing different, the wrong roles, maybe we switch it up a little bit, or whatever it is. So I think that adaptability, or that skill to kind of identify what's going wrong and make the necessary changes, if you like, is actually quite intrinsic to that program. And one of the things that we find is appealing to the program as a learning journey.
I think to echo that as well, Bill, I think it's certainly in terms, of our, any finalist that kind of goes through to, to pitching directly to Peter, we'll have feedback for them. And so we may make some recommendations on, look, it's really great, you did really well with your semi-final pitch, but we really think that you should consider X, Y, Z for your business, whether it's you're trying to do too much, trying to focus on one particular thing, or you're not quite ready to franchise it yet, scale it back, see what you can do in the next sort of 1 to sort of 2 years. So I think that when you're working with young people, they can be really possessive and really passionate and quite stubborn with their vision and their idea. You don't want to take that away from them, but they also have to consider that there might be other feedback might help them to improve their ideas or to refine it, and so that when they are presenting to the ultimate dragon, they're in with the best possible chance. So sometimes students find it quite hard to take on that feedback because they really don't. They want to protect and preserve whatever idea they pitch to us. But there is definitely that adaptability where they've kind of got to let go of what they've been thinking is a really great aspect of their business, but actually we think that's not really going to fly. It's not really going to work. It's not viable. It's not feasible. So it can kind of manifest that way as well.
We have another question from the audience. I'm going to read it, and then I'm going to paraphrase what I think is being asked. Bruce St. Clair asks, completely understand that you're not psychologists. I'm hearing some messaging pertaining to codependent thinking. Can you address this when it comes to having a genuine interest in starting your own business with that insecurity? And me paraphrasing is, how can I start a business if everyone else is telling me you shouldn't start a business?
Oh, I'm thinking. Do you want to take that one, Rupi? I'm thinking about it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, I mean, there's two ways to kind of approach it, right? The first is the real practical, what work have you done that makes you think that your business idea is viable and it's feasible, right? Have you done, any market research? Have you tested your product or your service? Have you had any feedback? Or is it just something that you have just been dreaming of since you were really young, and as you've gotten older, it's just never left the back of your mind, and you just really want to do it, but whoever you speak to says, I really don't think that's going to work, right? So you could just go for it, but that doesn't mean to say that you could potentially lose all your savings by investing it into it. Start small and start, maybe look at the first phase as a bit of testing, a bit of market research, and at least that way you're still doing it, even though people perhaps are saying that you shouldn't. I mean, I don't know, if you have set up your business and you want to keep it going despite perhaps the odds are stacked against you, then that's, maybe something a bit different. But, it kind of depends what it is.
Yeah, I'm sort of trying to think of the typical barriers. Sometimes it's I can't do it. That's too scary for me. I haven't got the skills. Sometimes it's I've got the skills, but my parents don't want me to do it. They want me to go down the more traditional route. Sometimes it's I want to do it, but I don't know where to start. All of those things for me have answers and solutions to. If it's the can't do, then that is going back to what we were saying earlier. It's about kind of instilling that self-belief, and that can be through mentoring or providing role models, or just as Rupi was saying, start small, start with a little side hustle, see how it goes, get a bit of confidence, and so on. And that side hustle approach can sometimes be a way of softening any kind of parental resistance as well. If it's like, look, this isn't going to derail my studies, it's just on the side, let's see how it goes, sort of thing. So I think it's kind of different approaches for different circumstances, but often it's about that kind of self-belief, and that in itself is an interesting thing to mull over, because we all know that kind of anxiety, mental health issues are massively on the rise in young people, and we'd say that if you can get entrepreneurship education right, that's another kind of route out of that. It's not the solution to the kind of mental health crisis, but it's potentially part of the solution, because if you can give a young person who's feeling a bit sort of down and anxious and is in a bad place something to kind of believe in, and something to invest in, and hopefully something that begins to get successful and give them that confidence and self-esteem, it can be a really powerful thing.
To those of us on the panel and those of us in the audience who might not be considered youth, where can we start? How can we inspire the side hustle generation? What is one thing that you could suggest any one of us do to start that process?
We would say our former CEO, to give him credit rather than to steal this from him, always used to draw a parallel between essential skills and health. No one's going to argue that you should have a healthy diet, that you should take exercise, that you should look after your body, etc., etc. And he used to say that you should think about skills in a similar way. You should always be looking to develop your skills, to become a better communicator, to become a better leader, to become better at digital skills, or to keep abreast of technological advances. Doesn't matter what age you are. You can be 5 years old, you can be 85 years old. So health's important at any age. Developing your essential skills are important at any age, and we should all think like that. So we're certainly not, as a charity, saying that side hustles are only for young people. That's the first point. We just are focused as a charity on young people. I think in terms of how older people can support younger people and help with addressing some of these issues that we've talked about, there's so many ways. I mean, a first step might be just to kind of introduce yourself to your local school and go, hey, I'm a kind of a successful entrepreneur or business person with an interesting story. If you've ever got like a careers day or you want to talk, I'm your man, sort of thing, or bear me in mind, or maybe that's a starting point, and that can lead to kind of becoming a mentor. We've got some fantastic mentors connected to our programs who have supported young people on their journeys. I don't know, Rupi, you could probably think of some other.
Yeah, no, I was going to say that, schools are always crying out for guest speakers to kind of come in and speak to students and share your experience. I mean, it might be that, you've got a school in your area that is, doing, taking part in the Tycoon Enterprise competition, and they may need somebody to come in and just help them with their business planning or with their sales techniques. Or, you might have your own sort of connections. Students might want to set up a pop-up store trading day, in their local, community centre or whatever it is. I think collectively, with your experience and with your knowledge and with the books that you've written, I think that you could definitely, there's going to be a lot in there that teachers and I think young people would really benefit from. And then, as Bill said, that could, I was going to say mentoring, but you've already sort of covered that, and it can lead to that. And that's the beauty of it, I think, because once you've got that relationship with a school and with a teacher who's really, really passionate and really keen to kind of embed enterprise into the school, that in itself can lead off to so many opportunities.
So, a quick question here. Side hustles. Why now? When I was a kid, there was no such thing as a side hustle. Well, not in the way that there is now, where everybody's got some kind of side hustle going on now. So why now? Why is it A, acceptable, and B, fashionable or even glamorous to do something away from your career?
Well, my answer, I think the side hustle thing was massively sort of accentuated by the pandemic, but I think my main answer would be technology has just made it a lot easier to set up a side hustle and do some e-commerce on the side, or set up your own website in your free time. And I think really technology's been the big enabler in terms of people setting up side hustles. I think there's probably been a bit of a cultural shift as well, and maybe it's slightly being driven by young people as well, as Rupi said earlier, that sort of interest in portfolio careers and looking at YouTubers and influencers and the rest of it who are earning a tidy sum by just doing something on the side. So that's what young people are seeing a lot of, and it's saying, well, look, I don't need to have all of my eggs in one basket. I can have several baskets, and we think that's a really healthy progression. By the way, we think, you don't want anyone getting made redundant and having no income. So if you've got several incomes, it's a safer place to be.
Rupi,
and I don't know,
Bill,
what do you guys think? That might not be the right answer.
I think nowadays portfolio careers are going to be the way forward. And I think that's also because quite often it's not just technology. Well, technology, being a musician, for example, what the advice now about being a musician is that you're a musician and you're something else, because you're not able to make the money that maybe that you were able to do in the past. And so I think sometimes also there's through necessary you're actually going to require to do a couple of jobs. Rob, do you want to pick up LinkedIn users' comment before you do the wrap up?
Sure. A LinkedIn user says, I found my first gig in college by cold calling service organizations, asked about their pain points, and offered my help as a learning opportunity to help their business. Excellent.
Yeah, great.
Rupi, Bill, This has been great. Thank you so much. Where can people learn more? How can they get in touch with you?
Well, we're online at peterjonesfoundation.org. You'll find our contact details there. Reach out to us as a foundation or to us as individuals, and yeah, we'd love to have a conversation.
Excellent.
And it's been a pleasure, by the way, being.
Thank you so much, Rupi and Bill, for coming on. Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys. I've missed my water cooler conversations, so this has more than made up for them.
Thank you so
guys.
much.
We now have a newsletter. Don't miss an episode. Get show highlights, beyond the show insights, and reminders of upcoming episodes. You can scan the QR code on screen or visit us at digitaldownload.live/newsletter. On behalf of the panelists, to our guests, to our audience, thank you all, and we'll see you next time on the Digital Download. Bye.
Thanks, Rupi and Bill.